Out of the five human senses, smell, taste, touch, sight, and hearing, the most important is vision. Humans are actually fairly unique in our reliance on sight as the dominant sense, and that is reflected in how complicated our eyes are relative to all other creatures. Humans can resolve 4 to 7 times more detail in our vision than dogs or cats, and more than 100 times more than a mouse or a fruit fly. There are some exceptions: eagles, vultures, and falcons, but aside from those birds, the human eye dominates in its ability to see details and colors on a wide horizontal view. And that's because human eyes have a large number of components designed to collect information. When you're seeing something, it's not your eyes that are seeing something, it's your brain. Light enters the eyes, but the brain is there to decipher. It tells us what we're looking at, what it means, how far away it is, how bright, what color, is it safe, is it dangerous? So our eyes aren't just performing a task when they see, they are a portal through which our brain tells us about our world, through which our brain learns new things, through which we make memories. And most of the time, when the Torah is speaking about seeing things, it is pointing to that sense of deep understanding that vision conveys. For example, at Mount Moriah, Abraham saw from afar, the Torah says. At Sinai, the Jews saw the thunder of God's presence. During the creation of the world, God saw that it was good. All of these are expressions of deep understanding and perceptiveness. But in this week's Parsha, the eyes become a symbol for something else. Ve'achalta et kol ha'amim Asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha, you will devour all the peoples that Hashem your God delivers to you. Lo tachos einecha aleihem. Do not have your eye take pity upon them. In this verse and in a few others as well, the eye is not that symbol for deep understanding and perceptiveness. It is a symbol for temptation. The idea here is actually very profound in Judaism, and that is that despite the eyes and their incredible ability to process information, not everything we see is true. And not everything we see is good. The Torah gives us a different idea of what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad. And if what you see contradicts what the Torah teaches, you don't follow your eyes. Rather, you listen to what you are told. Lo tachus eincha aleihem. Don't let your eyes lead you in the wrong direction. Shema Yisrael. Listen. To the eyes, everything about Canada's National Summit on Anti-Semitism, held virtually last Thursday, seemed right. The Prime Minister gave attention to this topic, which is extremely important for the Jewish community. We and Jews around the world have been targeted for our identities and for expressing solidarity in Israel. It is a great thing that the federal government saw this and wanted to take action to combat it. That seems like a tremendous victory. But from the moment the conference began, what the eyes were seeing was not matching the real lived experiences of the Jewish community. Let's remember exactly why this conference came about. Back in May, when Israel was under attack by Hamas, a tremendous wave of anti-Semitism erupted in North America and around the globe. The vast majority of these incidents, according to the Anti-Defamation League, were motivated by anger at Israel. Whether it was Sheikh Jarrah or the Temple Mount or Gaza, the escalation in the Middle East was the clear motivator in the increase in hate against Jews all over the world. As many of you know, Jews in Los Angeles and New York who were sitting down to dinner were punched, pushed, and attacked by a group that was using anti-Jewish slurs, all connected to Israel's perceived aggression. These anti-Jewish slurs could be heard most clearly at anti-Israel rallies that took place at the height of the conflict around the world, including some very large gatherings here in Toronto. At gatherings like the one here in our city, you would see Hamas flags on display. Hamas, I remind you, is a terrorist organization that calls for the genocide of Jews in its charter. During a May 15th rally in Washington, D.C., marchers chanted in Arabic, "O Khaybar, Khaybar, O you Jews, the army of Muhammad shall return." The chant refers to the siege, subjugation, and murder of Jews in the town of Khaybar by Muhammad and his army in the 7th century. On May 22nd, during a rally in Philadelphia, demonstrators were heard declaring Israel controls the media. And in London, Jewish caricatures were on display at these rallies with long noses and dollar signs and the classic anti-Semitic stereotypes. That rally in London took a turn to march through the Golders Green neighborhood, an area where Jews live in London, specifically to intimidate those residents. And at all of these rallies, many signs, many chants, many symbols referencing Nazi Zionist Jews. But let's talk specifically about the anti-Semitic incidents in Canada that motivated this conference. In Côte Saint-Luc, in Montreal, police arrested 2 Muslim men for driving around the Jewish community to find Jewish homes and Jews on the streets that they could threaten. Similar incidents were reported in Edmonton and here in Thornhill. 4 Palestinian protesters were arrested in Montreal for trying to break into the Israeli consulate using rocks that they hurled at the windows. And when there was a pro-Israel gathering in downtown Montreal, one participant said the scene was a Canadian intifada. At that rally, which was held on May 16th, a gang of some 20 men hurled large objects, rocks, smoke bombs, and at least one green smoke astringent projectile at the crowd and at the police. Aaron Simon, one participant at the rally, was hit in the back of his head with a rock on his way back to his car. This is what he said, I quote, "It was rage, and to me it was an act of terrorism. If it wasn't for the police, it would have been a bloody mess. Clearly the city is not taking this seriously enough. The Jewish community is very scared. This is out of control. We shouldn't be this scared. This was a peaceful rally, and there was a mob scene with people trying to get to us. They were out for blood. All we wanted to do was go back home." End quote. Later that evening, Montreal police arrested 15 protesters and rioters on charges ranging from armed assault, obstruction of justice, to criminal mischief. This is what happened in Canada in May. And I don't even have the time today to get into the harassment and intimidation and hatred that was all over social media. Some of us were a part of it. We know where the hate was coming from. We know what was motivating it. We saw the attackers with our own eyes, and unless our eyes are leading us astray, it is as clear as day that these attacks were motivated by Islamic anti-Semitism, which is alive and well in Canada today. I said Islamic anti-Semitism. Does saying that make me Islamophobic? I make this assertion without the desire to offend any person. In the Jewish religion, it is forbidden to hate anyone. But we are commanded to hate falsehood, and we are commanded to hate evil, and we are commanded to hate injustice. And the idea that worldwide Jewry must be called to account for the perceived sins of the state of Israel is falsehood, is evil, is injustice. And yet it is an idea that has propagated throughout the Islamic world since 1948. If you don't believe me, talk to any descendant of the 850,000 Jews of Sephardi and Mizrahi descent who were expelled from their homes in Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Yemen, Turkey, Syria, and more since then. But that idea that worldwide Jewry must be held to account for the sins of Israel that motivated those expulsions years ago, that still lives on in the Muslim world. Last month, if you remember, a terrible attack occurred in London, Ontario, where a family was killed in an attack motivated by Islamophobia. For anybody who cares about this country, that attack was an outrage. It did not involve the Jewish community, but the Jewish community was extremely vocal in its condemnation and its outrage. A few days after the attack, a vigil was held in memory of the victims, attended by the Prime Minister. One of the speakers was an imam named Munir al-Qassam, a very well-known imam. In his remarks, he had the audacity to link the attack in London with the hostilities in Israel, saying, "I just want to say whatever is happening in Jerusalem and Gaza is connected and related to what happened in London, Ontario, period." His comments were received by the crowd with thunderous applause. Far it be from me to tell all the distinguished people who planned last week's conference what to focus on, but with humility, given everything we've seen and experienced over the past few months, perhaps the conference could have focused on anti-Semitism fueled by imams, fueled by mosques, fueled by madrasas, fueled by Muslim theology. When Jews confronted anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic tropes in Catholic theology, it led to tremendous reforms in the Catholic Church. why not audaciously confront the same anti-Semitism in Muslim theology? Well, I'll tell you why. You know the answer why. It's because we're living in an age of political correctness, and in the age of political correctness, anything negative that you have to say about Islam will instantly get you labeled an Islamophobic racist. In this stupid society where we live, we have separated every ethnic group into the categories of either the oppressed victims or the guilty aggressors. And the gods of political correctness have decided that Muslims are the oppressed victims, and so they are shielded from all criticism, no matter how legitimate it may be. Stupid. So when the conference opened, some of our good progressive friends in the Jewish community, whose names I won't name, chose to focus their remarks on neo-Nazis. Don't get me wrong. We should all be against neo-Nazis. To the eye, it sounds right. But a rise in neo-Nazi hate is not what motivated this conference. We are being deceived. We are so stuck in the land of political correctness that the day after the summit on anti-Semitism, the government held a similar conference on Islamophobia, just so nobody gets upset and says that the Jews are getting too much sympathy. I want to be clear before you all send me hate mail, or some of our online viewers send me hate mail. I am against Islamophobia, and Islamophobia is a real thing. We condemn the killings at that mosque in Quebec City. We condemn those killings in London. We condemn every hate crime against the Muslim people. But we should not be subject to cancellation when we say that Islamic anti-Semitism is also a real thing. 15 Muslim rioters were arrested in Montreal for trying to initiate a Canadian intifada. What mosque did they attend? What are their names? Where did they learn to hate? Why didn't that story get reported in any of the major news outlets? I don't know the answers to any of these questions, and that's because there are people out there who want our eyes to see some things, but not to see other things. Lo tachus eincha alehem. Don't let your eyes lead you in the wrong direction. I am not making these remarks to score points with some people in our shul or to anger, God forbid, anybody else. Like most rabbis, I actually hate talking about anti-Semitism. I would much rather offer a positive message about Jewish life. But I am standing here genuinely worried about the increasing frequency and severity of anti-Semitic incidents in our country, and they need to stop. Just a couple of days ago near Yonge and Eglinton, a young Jewish man was smashed into a fence 2 days ago and told, "You will never take Palestine from us." If we want these incidents to stop, we have to start speaking the truth. And more importantly, we have to know who's telling us the truth, and who, on the other hand, is crafting their words very carefully so as not to offend anybody, to win votes or political favors. Knowing the difference between one and the other is what Jews call a sixth sense. Over the centuries, our ancestors and us, we learned to develop a sixth sense. It's called the kishkes. To see, to know things, to feel things instinctively. Kishkes is the sense that our life in exile planted within us. This is a time when we need kishkas. Demand that we toss aside political correctness, reject the politics of apologies, the politics of blame, the politics of victimhood, and confront these difficult subjects head on. If we really care that our descendants will see and realize a more peaceful future, it's the kishkas that will make it happen. Ken Yehi Ratzon.